But all of a sudden, Ukrainians proved that they're not victims, but they're fighting back. And they're fighting back quite actively. And this was a surprise for our Western partners. In the situation when your resources are very scarce, you have to be inventive, you have to be creative. This is something you do when you realize that you're in a situation when you need to protect yourself, when you need to fight back in order to keep your country alive and keep your society alive. And what we see now is a collective effort. Our engineers, of our politicians, of our industry, of our IT sector, of our military, of course. We are the victims that can fight back, and we have agency, and we continue to have this agency regardless of the war, which is happening in our country for many years, for more than a decade.
Бо наша воля то є наша кров, повітря нашої сили джерело, свободи сонце більше не зайде, і Україна була є й буде.
Hello and welcome to the Talking Ukraine podcast. It's been a little bit since we've had a new episode, but today I'm very happy to have Anastasia Bezverkha. Anastasia is someone I met back in 2004 during the Orange Revolution. She was a spokesperson for Pora, which was a youth activist organization at the time. And she appears in my first documentary, The Orange Chronicles. We've kept in touch over the years. So, I'd like to get into the timeline of what you've been up to, Nastya, since that time and where you are today. So welcome to the Talking Ukraine podcast.
Hi, Damian. Happy to see you.
Let's maybe go back to 2004. And how did you get involved with Pora? You were a student at that time. Or you're from Kyiv, or did you go to school in Kyiv? And how did you decide to become active with Pora back then?
Well, yeah, back in the day. So yeah, I'm from Kyiv, and in 2004, I think I was a student at Kyiv Mohyla Academy. I was studying political science. Of course, in Kyiv Mohyla, everybody was quite involved in the Orange Revolution. I was working for the NGO, which was following the elections. And at the moment when elections were stolen, the youth movement, the youth initiative was launched. And I was busy covering international media and working as a spokesperson. So yeah, and this is how we met. We met at Maidan, and then you kept coming to Ukraine from time to time, and I think we kept in touch ever since. And then I remember I was visiting New York, and you were also hosting me and showing me around some Ukrainian spots in Manhattan.
Yeah, the
That's
East
what I
Village.
remember.
Yeah, the East Village Ukrainian neighborhood. That's right. So how long did you stay in Pora, and when did you decide to leave Pora? And why did you leave Pora? And what did you do after that? Like around what year? Because
Well, after Orange Revolution won, we can say that. So after Yushchenko became president, and the civic initiative was about to change its face, and they decided to turn into political party. I realized that this is no longer something I'm interested in, because I was more focused on civic activism, not on political work. So at that point, I left, and I was involved in a couple of other civic initiatives. And ever since, I was involved in, like, generally in civil society in Ukraine, in various roles as an activist, as a media expert, as a consultant, as a coordinator. I was working for the donor organizations, for the NGOs, multiplicity of roles, but everything related to protection of human rights, public health, democracy, freedom of speech. And like in between of that, I received PhD and gave birth to two kids.
Amazing. Yeah. I mean, when I first met you, you were like one of the few younger people I met who were younger than me. who spoke very well, very good English. And I was just like, wow, there's this whole like new generation of Ukrainians that are Western, they weren't like this post-Soviet sort of, maybe idea that I had of Ukraine at that time. So like to me, it was like opening to modern Ukraine, if you will, because I had sort of like had this, I guess, impression that Ukraine was sort of backwards, and like all of a sudden there's all these engaged youth people who are very progressive. So to me, you were always like the face of that because we had met and spoke. So it's great that you've been able to do so much in your time, uh, in the years following since the Orange Revolution.
We should also mention another point in time, the Revolution of Dignity,
Okay.
because this is when you also came to Ukraine and also you did a documentary.
Yeah. Yeah.
And of course, we met and we had a chat, we had an interview. So, Revolution of Dignity was something I think crucial for Ukraine and crucial for it was like a test for the civil society in Ukraine. Um, and then situation changed in terms of the war started, Crimea was occupied, and a lot of volunteers who were former activists, they become um, volunteers and went to the army, and probably they become the first units that were protecting Ukraine by force, by military force. So this was a turning point when the whole concept of civil society changed.
Mm.
In speaking of 2022, when the war started, I was working as an expert, as a consultant, again for the civil society. Uh, but at that moment in February, I think it was quite clear for people in Kyiv, in Ukraine, that something's going to happen. And I think we were preparing for that. At least like my family and my close friends, everybody was preparing for that. So at 5 a.m., when we heard first explosions and we started calling each other and we realized that the war started, I already had full tank. My car was packed. My kids were prepared. And we went straight outside of Kiev, even before the first traffic jams of people who wanted to leave appeared. So I don't think I was feeling some sort of fear. I think I was already quite stressed and uh, kind of reserved. So my main function switched from being an activist to being a mother. And my role was to protect my children. So I took them to Ivano-Frankivsk, where we spent a couple of weeks uh, doing some volunteering stuff. I was looking for military gear, I was looking for money, I was coordinating, I was doing what I could. But then I realized that the war is not going to end soon. And I decided to move abroad, and we went to the Netherlands, where my cousin, my sister, lives for many years, and also a friend of mine who supported me in this move. And we basically lived in the Netherlands uh, for the last 3 years. And in summer 2025, so 1 year ago, we returned back to Kyiv, and we spent last very nice, a very uh, harsh winter in Kiev. And I think this is an experience that we all as Ukrainians share, and something that we'll never forget and also never forgive.
Yeah, I mean, you could have stayed in the Netherlands. What did you feel like a duty to come back, or like what pulled you back to go back to Kiev? Obviously with a big question mark about how life would be there.
Well, I am talking to many people who have returned, like myself, and we all agree that the answer to this question is very simple. That for people whose answer is simple, you don't need to explain anything. I mean, I returned back to Ukraine because this is my home. And for me, this is enough. Of course, I heard a lot of people were looking at me like I am crazy, but this is something that there was no discussion for me and for my family about that. We just returned because this is our home and this is where we live. This is where our life is.
Yeah.
And now I'm actively working in Ukraine and I'm continuing to live here, whatever hard things happen or may happen or already happened.
Well, maybe we can talk about what the work that you're doing now. You're working for the Mnozhyna Foundation. Can you talk more about what they do and what you do there specifically?
Yes, I am currently working in this newly established philanthropic institution called Mnozhyna Foundation. It's a private foundation founded by a family of Ukrainians, Anna and Mykola Sushko. And I am leading currently one of the four thematic programs. My program is called Identity. So I'm dealing with issues of identity. And besides of that, we also have a program on culture, on resilience, and on capacity. We have a program on capacity. Uh, Something that I'm really proud of, not only because of the values that are behind the mission and ideas of this foundation, but also uh, behind the whole concept of Ukrainian capital investing back into Ukraine. For many years, our civil society in general was heavily relying on international taxpayers, on international technical aid. And when we know that there is initiative of Ukrainians who are willing to invest into Ukraine's identity, Ukraine's culture, Ukraine's capacity to become stronger, this is something that I find very much respectful, and I'm really glad to be part of that and to develop the programs and procedures currently because we are just establishing and we have just had our open call and entire four programs attracted 820 applications, which is a lot. And it tells a lot about the need, about the demand of the civil society for this type of programs and for this type of initiatives, not only from this private person, from this business, but also from others.
Well, who would be a person that would apply? Like for example, can you give an example of a person that would apply and what they would be looking for or what they would be doing, or what you would be doing with them? Like,
Mhm. So Mnozhyna Foundation works as a classic grant institution, providing grants. So we are the donor, and a Ukrainian established NGO. It could be a newly registered one or an old one that has confirmed expertise and confirmed experience in the field that they are applying for, but also the values and the willingness to make change in the country, to introduce educational programs, to create content, to work with children, to work with forcibly replaced people, to work with veterans, to work with their families, also to develop cultural products that speak about Ukraine for the foreign audiences and also for Ukrainians themselves, organizations that work with diversity in our country, that examine diversity or they study or they are think tanks, are also can be our grantees. But also something which is very important that we are interested in regional initiatives, in small grassroots organizations that are just emerging or probably do not have a lot of experience, but willing to work within their communities, strengthening their communities, working on social cohesion. So people are becoming stronger connected, they are becoming more resilient. They learn together, they do something together, they do sports together, they sing together, create festivals. everything that makes our society powerful, dynamic, interesting.
Do you think there is a bigger interest within the Ukrainian population to establish or discover a Ukrainian identity? I mean, like from my perspective, coming from Orange Revolution times and over the years, I've seen the Ukrainian identity grow and evolve into something that's, uh, I, for lack of a label word, cooler or more interesting for a lot of people than it was. I mean, you didn't hear Ukrainian language much in Kyiv, back in 2004, before the Maidan in 2014. I mean, you heard it, but it was rare, right? I mean, my sense has been that the war, the full scale invasion has made people have to choose a side. Maybe people who didn't care so much or were indifferent, or maybe were even pro-Russian, but after the war started, that's changed. I mean, yeah, like I've always had this theory that the war had, Putin's war has actually had the adverse effect of what it wanted, where they wanted to Russify everything, but they actually made those Russian speakers want to become more Ukrainian. I mean, is that like just a naive diaspora point of view on things, or like, do you see that within the society from your point of view?
Well, I think you touched upon a couple of questions about Ukrainian identity. Obviously, yes, there is a big demand from various demographic groups, from young people to elder generation, to rediscover our identity, to find out about our culture, our history, to rediscover the names of our poets that they were repressed, or the unknown pages of history that were silenced by the Soviet regime, to rediscover our Soviet memory in the way that there's a Ukrainian page on the Soviet history, right? And this page is important for us. Also, in terms of the cool identity, I think if you go to Kyiv now or other city, you will see young people who are modern, who are, West exposed, have been traveling abroad. They are part of Ukrainian and also European culture. We have nightclubs, we have cafes, restaurants, cultural life, theaters, everything which is brand new, but also which is Ukrainian in nature. And people speak Ukrainian not because they wanted to run away from Russian, but they choose to be Ukrainian just because they want to belong to this community, because it's a very modern, developed community, but also because we are living through a very critical moment. And this war, it leaves you no choice of like the side that you are choosing. You are either choosing life because you want to live, or you are killed. You are killed by Russians. So there's no choice to make, right? The choice is obvious.
Yeah, and I feel like this pressure of living in this kind of environment is moving the society, accelerating the society forward in a way that it's not here necessarily in Europe where I am, or in America. I mean, for instance, as an example, just the development of the drone industry, that Ukrainians had to be agile and resourceful, which they always were. I mean, I saw that in Maidan, how they would take whatever they had around and utilize it in innovative ways, right? But it's now applied. You had all these, the IT industry, which had been pretty evolved in the last decade, and sort of segue over into the drone industry, right? So like the forces pressed upon the society are forcing it to respond with innovation. I mean, do you see that, like, not just in the military, military technology industry, but outside of that?
Yeah, this reminds me of quite popular quote by Alexandra Matvichuk, who was a Nobel Prize winner for civil society recently. And she told that Europe was looking at us, and also US, they were looking at us as we are the victim of this war, which we obviously are. But they were also treating us as a victim. And for victim, you have to keep quiet and die very quietly in the corner because you're the role of the victim. But all of a sudden, Ukrainians proved that they're not victims, but they're fighting back. And they're fighting back quite actively. And this was a surprise for our Western partners because they're not used to this type of attitude. They don't know how to treat a victim which is fighting back and fighting back quite actively and quite efficiently. In the situation when your resources are very scarce, you have to be inventive, you have to be creative, and the favorable situation, I hope it is one, that we're now looking at the battlefield and with the middle strike attacks that Ukraine is currently deploying on Russia. This is a result of the many year efforts of our engineers, of our politicians, of our industry, of our IT sector, of our military, of course. This is something you do when you realize that you're in a situation when you need to protect yourself, when you need to fight back in order to keep your country alive and keep your society alive. And what we see now is a collective effort that we have proven that we are the victims that can fight back, and we have agency, and we continue to have this agency regardless of the war, which is happening in our country for many years, for more than a decade.
Yeah, I guess a lot of people forget that it's been going on since 2014.
14.
Yeah. Um, when you mention civil society, like if you were to like define that, I mean, are you considering that like are those people who are active beyond going to their jobs and engaging in what's going on in the country? Like what does that mean for you, civil society? Are these people, because they say like, oh, revolutions or changes are made by about 5% of the actual population or 10% of the actual population. Like, are you talking about this this percentage of the population that is actively engaged, or is this a bigger pool of the population, or like how would you define it for someone who's not sure what that
I
is?
think we need to look at the values that drive Ukrainians in the actions that they do. We have very high level of horizontal networks. So people rely on their neighbors, on members of their community, on their family, on their friends, much more than on the authorities. Maybe it means a lack of trust in authorities, but also it means that our horizontal networks of communication and of support, they're very, very strong. And if you look at the level of engagement that we have seen during the Revolution of Dignity, but also in early 2022, it speaks by itself. You may not be involved in the civil society as being a member of the NGO, but when the situation is critical, you know where to go and you know whom to help and how. So you find your little role in this huge nationwide network of people who are connected and who are willing to do something. Some people were driving around evacuating people. Some people were driving evacuating animals. People were baking bread, gathering medical supplies, buying all sorts of military equipment, which was very rare to find during the first days and months of invasion, of the full-scale invasion. Some people were providing information to the Western media. They were translating and collecting information and then just sending it out. So, of course, a lot of people volunteered for the army. So once the situation is critical, because we are so used to connect to each other, It just came out natural. And this is something that I think Russia was not foreseeing.
I was going to
They
say
were
that Russia doesn't
expecting.
understand this concept at
No,
all. Like they
no,
can't comprehend that this exists in a in a population, I think, you know.
no. I think their values and the way their society is created is critically different from Ukrainian one. And this is what makes us uh, so different, but also this is something that probably could not understand how different we are in this perspective, how our values and the way our societies are created, they're so different. And probably this is one of the reasons they want to invade us, because they want to strip us of our kind of Ukrainian identity, but also our statehood and our democratic way of being, of governing ourselves.
I think, I wanted to ask you this, and this ties into it. I mean, you went through one of the worst winters, the worst winter Ukraine has had. With this campaign of terror of like Russians trying to you turn off electricity, turn off the heat, and basically terrorize the population into saying enough, enough. Just make this stop. Let's make an agreement with Russia. Let's give them what they want. I mean, right? That's their goal in these tactics, and it hasn't worked. And we're seeing now that the Russians are starting to feel it a little bit now, and that they're complaining. I mean, why hasn't this tactic worked in Ukraine? I mean, it was really intense, right? Like, what was it like for you, and why do you think? How did people react? From what you saw, and where I mean, I guess there was a variety of reactions, but it seems ultimately it was an effective tactic for Russia. It didn't make people en masse say stop the war, give Russia what they want.
Well, I haven't seen any statements stop, make, give Russia what they want. Uh, all I have seen is that people have become more angry, more knowing who their enemy is, and also being more supportive to each other. The debris of the drone that hit my building that I'm now living in, um, once that happened, in the chat of the tenants of this house, I have seen messages like right away. I'm happy to give you shelter. I'm happy to give you food. Come if you need anything. The cat was lost, and all the house was looking for the cat, which escaped during the fire when the drone hit the building. The neighboring buildings were also coming and helping to clean up the debris. Uh, so everything that we have seen was more support, more understanding of people's pain, and more, I think, negative feelings towards the enemy. And I haven't seen any like complaints like we are now seeing. Russians are complaining about the lack of gas on their gas stations, and what are they going to do?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen, but Yulia Mendel, Zelensky's former press secretary, like posting all the time now, like, oh, like they need to come with some agreement. Ukrainians are being,
No,
uh,
but she's paid. Come on. I mean, this is not, I mean, no. She's a figure that she's obviously influenced by some political forces. I mean, I
seems like,
wouldn't I wouldn't consider her to be like genuine speaker speaking for herself. I mean,
yeah. I mean, she's living in the States right now, I think. Yeah. Well, sp getting out of Ukraine a bit, you were just at this Ukrainian World Congress Global Summit in Switzerland. Um,
yes.
what was that experience like? Who was there, and was it worth the trip? Because I love. I mean, I'm here in Germany, and a lot of times we feel very removed from what's going on. Like I'm experiencing a lot of it on a screen, and people here, just going about their normal lives. Not it's quite difficult, to just interact with other people who are non-Ukrainians, because it's so, they're not even aware of what's really going on,
Mhm.
and they're just like, when is the war going to end? How many people need to die? Like just wishing for things to go back to the way they were, right? Almost in a way like Ukraine needs to make peace. I mean, that's sort of like the underlying feeling here. Like, let's just go back to the way things were. Um, so, I'm
So speaking about Ukraine World Congress, uh, it was their global summit, and I think a lot of people, I think there were people from 50 countries-ish. So it made a huge diversity and it united many waves of Ukrainian migration. So starting from this old post-war wave to up until the new migrants and forced refugees who fled Ukraine in 2022. And now they're living in abroad. They live in different countries abroad. So what was important for me to see what is the attitude, like what is the atmosphere. And I have seen that Ukrainian communities abroad, they are extremely active and they are extremely diverse. And I think now the Global World Congress realizes that new incoming migrants who are establishing their lives abroad, they are a huge potential and they're a huge advantage for the further development of the Ukrainian communities across the world. They bring skills, they bring new knowledge, they bring new connections. They're quite active at the political arena, so they're working with the home country governments in terms of new sanctions, in terms of providing military aid. They're advocating for Ukrainians' needs, and they are facilitating a lot of internal processes between our diplomacy and local governments. So they do a lot of work, but also they are interested in continuing preserving their Ukrainian identity. They're interested in continuing learning the language, giving their children education in Ukrainian and about Ukraine. So the Sunday schools, they are growing in numbers. And of course, the new kids are coming. And so the new materials are needed, teachers are needed. So something which needs a lot of efforts to develop and to scale up. This is what I noticed. And of course, there's a lot of I think, understanding of the critical moment that Ukraine is now going through, and hope, not only hopes for the victory, but also readiness to work for the victory. Uh, Before that, before the full-scale invasion, I think Ukrainian community abroad was very much focused on just preserving their Ukrainianness. So, of course, people wanted to go to Ukrainian church, they wanted to speak the language, they wanted to have their celebrations according to Ukrainian traditions. But now it's becoming more of a political fight, it's becoming more of a public appearance, countering Russian propaganda, becoming more strong, more visible, something that a young generation of migrants, of Ukrainians abroad are ready to do. And I think it's a good sign. It's a sign that Ukrainians abroad and Ukrainians in Ukraine very much connected, and they have this like feeling that they're working for one cause. And our role would be like maybe to help them facilitate this process. But I see a lot of readiness and a lot of kind of, people are charged to do things.
well, especially people at this uh, meeting, the summit, and we're seeing what you're saying here in Munich, but on the other hand, there are a lot of people who have left Ukraine who may not come back now. The longer they stay here and their kids start going to school here, and some may stay active in the Ukrainian communities wherever they are, and some may assimilate. I mean, the other thing is like this sort of brain drain from Ukraine, right? Like 10 million people or something left. Like, do you think those people will want to come back, like when when it's safe, when there's an opportunity to do so? I mean, that's the other, you know, will they bring some of their European skills, maybe, and new mentality back to Ukraine, or you think a lot of these people are just got, but will not go back to Ukraine?
Well, it's a big and tough question. And of course, it's a huge demographic challenge for Ukraine for the next decades that we have to be aware of and be prepared for. But I think you cannot make people return, right? You can create the environment that would be favorable for them to return and to develop themselves, like to find a new job and to become prosperous and to bring their kids back so they feel safe and their education is good and they are still capable of traveling and making their careers. Uh, what is important is that if the person left Ukraine, it doesn't mean that it's a betrayal. For many, for some people, I hear that people leave because they have reasons for that, because we have full-scale invasion and the houses are burned down, people uh, lose everything. So for some of them, this was the only way to survive and for their children and families to stay safe. And you cannot blame people for that. That's normal. Some of them definitely will stay in their home, how do you call that? In
Adopted country, new country.
their adopted countries. So some of these people will definitely stay and live their lives in the adopted countries. And of course, some of them will return. So what we can do is that we can help people who are willing to return by providing them with what they need in Ukraine. And for people who are not willing to return, don't need to forget about them and to kind of cross them out from the Ukrainian communities, because they are continue to be Ukrainians and they are mutually important and their needs are important and their willingness to participate in the Ukrainian communities abroad are important. We are one, right? We are Ukrainians in Ukraine and abroad. Uh, we have uh, we have a common job. We have a common goal, right? For Ukraine to survive as a state, for Ukraine to win, and also to become prosperous and to become a fully established European country. So if we do this together, it doesn't matter where you live.
Yeah, so you said what I wanted to ask you next, a fully developed European country. So the goal for Ukraine has always been for a long time to join the European Union, right? There's always like these political obstacles to that, and corruption and reforms, to limit corruption is a part of that. But despite like all these details, I mean, do you think there's a benefit for Ukraine to joining the European Union, and is there a benefit for the European Union in having Ukraine join? I mean, because that's been something that I think you've had in your minds, probably since we met, right?
At this point, I think it's mutually beneficial, both for European Union and for Ukraine to unite. Of course, it's not going to happen overnight, but the process of reforms is going on, and of course, it's a long way. What it is important to realize that I think Europe now starts to realize that its security is just impossible without Ukraine. We have become so strong, and our experience at the front lines and with the defense technologies have become so developed. So without us, being situated at the borderline between the authoritarian part of the world and between the democratic part of the world, our place both geographically and politically and defense-wise, is so critical that Europe cannot survive without Ukraine at this point. So we have to, as the country, make a lot of efforts to continue reforms in order to be eligible for the European Union, but also EU has to make steps forward towards us to continue this process as quickly as it is possible at this point, provided that we have a full-scale war going on and that politically Europe is unstable and things change with regards to who's in power in which country and which political party takes over. So a lot of factors, but this movement has to continue both ways.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm disappointed that Hungary still is sort of being a difficult, maybe a little less difficult, but still difficult in trying to
Hungary
find a
is
solution.
protecting, Hungary is protecting their own interest, which is fine, which is what countries do. So it's a matter of how we communicate within the European community of nations. I think this relationship has become much better.
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely. There's been improvement from where it was last year. Yeah.
Ukrainian identity, it's not just a set of characteristics that we want to follow, that we want to share, like the language or which traditions we follow or which history we learn. It's also a very important battlefield that is now going on between Ukraine and Russia, but also between kind of the Western civilized world and this authoritarian part, which includes Russia, but also other or authoritarian regimes. So the identity is a place where the cognitive war is going on. And for us, it is very important which sources of information we consume, what kind of attitudes this information stirs up into us, because cognitive warfare influences how we make decisions, how we treat others, how we treat other countries, how we treat our neighbors, our neighboring countries. And this is the influence that Russia is now interested in. They realize that they cannot make a lot of success on the physical battlefield, so they engage into the battlefield for our brain, for our minds, and it is very important for everyone to be very much aware what is going on and how our attitudes then influence the way we treat others, the way we treat ourselves, how we think about ourselves, how we treat our history, and also how it informs our common future. This is probably like a call sign for people to be more critical towards the information they consume, but also to be critical about how you then transform this into the actions, how you transform this into the decisions that you make at your everyday level, but also at the level of decision making in your community or in your business or in your country.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say it's a big problem in America right now as well. And with all this AI and people being in their own echo chambers, there's just like totally different interpretations of reality.
Yep. Yep.
And it's a huge
This is what
problem.
cognitive war is. Yes, it makes us look at the reality. And when you live in your own bubble, you are so much used to it that you think this is the whole world, but this is not true. So the critical thinking and critical analysis of what's going on and probably looking at alternative sources and, following your own emotions that you feel after consuming certain information. This is something that is a way out from this trap.
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, I hope there is a way out, because if it keeps going the way it is, it's not
I am
promising for human civilization.
Well, chances are never zero, but I'm staying positive about our capacity to be more kind of critical and selective about what we consume and then how it affects our lives.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's something that people need to be aware of, and educated about, like in all different points in their life, I think, especially now. So anyway, yeah. Well, I'm glad to see you. Glad you're everything is good and summer is coming in Kyiv. So thank you for taking
Yeah.
some time. And I hope you have a peaceful this can be summer with your family.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's a very nice and hot and bright summer, and we're enjoying it, being prepared for probably another harsh winter.
Probably, but there's this feeling that things can't last the way they have been for that much longer, that somehow change in the dynamic of the war in the next year.
Let's not only hope for that, but also do something for that.
Бо наша воля то є наша кров, повітря нашої сили джерело, свободи сонце більше не зайде, і Україна була, є й буде.